All right, everybody. I think we're live. Last week when we did this, or about a week and a half ago when we did this, we didn't have good audio. So we got confirmation that we got good audio this time. We're glad to hear that. While you're here, don't forget like and subscribe so that you can know when we're doing more of these Q&A lives. So that we can answer your questions. And if you don't want to do a question on the YouTube Q&A live, call in the office, write in the office, write an email, write a letter, stop in the office. We have offices in St. Lucie County, Martin County, Palm Beach County. Stop in wherever you want, and we will do our best to help you with anything and everything that we can. So I want to talk a little bit about the most popular questions that have come into the office in the past few days and what's going on in Washington, what we've been up to. Had a hearing today on Capitol Hill with Secretary of State Antony Blinken. I sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He is the Secretary of State. It's one of he's the top diplomat of our nation and somebody that we speak to a fairly good amount on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I spoke to him specifically along with one of my colleagues about the Iran deal and about specifically requirements that the administration is looking at in order to take off any kind of sanctions that have been put in place on Russia. Now, the very unfortunate part of it, I'm going to back up and say this, actually. If you watch those videos of hearings, quite often people will be like, why are you interrupting them? Or why are you, talking so fast or not giving them a chance to answer? So there's a lot of things that go on peripheral to the couple minutes that I might answer questions, right? So a couple of days ago, I watched Antony Blinken respond to questions to the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, or basically not answer their questions for the better part of a couple hours. Then I watched as other colleagues of mine in the House of Representatives were asking him questions, and he pretty much refused to answer those questions. He would do his best to talk very slowly, say a whole bunch of things that were not actually answering the questions. So when you see me trying to move them on, it's because I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to just filibuster the 5 minutes of time that I have to actually ask them something without actually saying anything. And so that's where it becomes my job to actually get them to try and spit out some truth, which is not very often that they do. We also had Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas on the Hill today as well. And you heard something come out today known as, what was it? The Disinformation Governance Board. And I think when you look at this administration and their secretaries like Blinken and Mayorkas and others, you got to look at these individuals like they are the Disinformation Distribution Board, because that is what they've been out there doing. And Jennifer Psaki at the White House and others, whether you're talking about what went on with Hunter Biden's laptop, or what went on with the Afghanistan withdrawal, or what's going on at the border, or a host of other things, they are the distributors of disinformation. So if it weren't so sad, it's actually laughable that they are trying to create something called the Disinformation Governance Board. So that's a little bit about what I did on the Foreign Affairs Committee today. Blinken, I did my best to ask him what were the requirements to lift sanctions or resume commerce with Russia, because I really don't want the administration to jump into resuming commerce with Russia. I don't want us to have to be enthralled to Russia for oil and gas, or Venezuela like the administration is trying to do right now, or Iran like the administration is trying to do right now. And they also took a few minutes, Secretary Blinken, to lie a little bit about saying Iran never broke any of their commitments to the Iran nuclear deal. So one of the reasons they shouldn't have any problem getting into a new Iran nuclear deal. And that was a little bit about the Foreign Affairs hearing, Blinken today, and what went on with that. If you have any questions about Ukraine that I can answer for you, always happy to do so. Also had a what we would call a markup, where we actually have a piece of legislation in front of us on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. We had a number of pieces of legislation that we marked up. When we mark them up on committee, that's the step before taking those pieces of legislation and bringing them to the floor of the House of Representatives for the full body of the House of Representatives to vote on that piece of legislation. And then if it passes, it goes to the Senate. And if it passes the Senate, then it goes to the president's desk, right? That's the process for how a bill becomes a law. And in that, one of the amendments that I had passed today on the Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure was specifically related to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, that agency that will get on the ground within a couple hours or a couple days. If there's a hurricane, a tornado, or a mudslide or a forest fire, things like that somewhere, they get on the ground, they assist people on the ground. One of the things they don't assist for right now is the destruction of toxic algal blooms that we see in our community, which are not exactly hitting us because of naturally occurring disasters like a hurricane or a wildfire or something like that might happen. They're hitting us by the hand of the federal government. The federal government, with their hand of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, is pulling the lever at Port Mayaca and then the St. Lucie Lock and Dam, and they release those algal blooms out of Lake Okeechobee to our coastal estuary on the East Coast and over on the West Coast as well. Send those algal blooms to other places so that destruction, those disasters, are actually created by the federal government, which is really the opposite of what FEMA does, where they're supposed to come in and help. They don't come in and help for the disaster the federal government creates. So this amendment basically created a requirement that FEMA lay out the criteria for harmful, toxic algal blooms like what we see in our community, for FEMA to be able to go out and assist with what happens with that, mitigate that, do what FEMA does as it relates to disasters around the country in a host of different ways. We demanded that FEMA come up with the criteria to do that, because that's what they said. Well, we don't have the criteria to do this. So we said, okay, here's a piece of legislation. We're demanding that you do come up with the criteria to do that. And our committee passed that. We will look forward to that moving to the floor of the House of Representatives. So moving on to some of the top issues that came in this week in terms of questions. First one I got on my list in terms of top issues that came in terms of questions was Travel Mask Mandate Repeal Act. So that particular piece of legislation, I'm not a co-sponsor of. I do have my own piece of legislation that is specifically about travel mask mandate repeal, and it's being pushed by the leadership on our side right now. This is a piece of legislation that, before the Florida courts went out there and said, listen, no more mask requirements on aircraft or in transit, I was working a piece of legislation that I wrote to say the exact same thing. No more masks in travel unless it is that you want one. Everybody is free to do that if they want to. They should be free to not do that if they don't want to. So then the courts made that decision. It kind of created the need to push my legislation aside because the courts were taking care of that. But now what is the Biden administration doing? They are appealing what the courts went out there and said, and trying to make it so that now if you go in transit again, you're going to have to go back to putting on a mask. Or if you're traveling with your kids across the country, your kids are going to have to go back to having masks on in transit. They're trying to undo what the courts did. So now there is a need again for that piece of legislation. So the way that the leadership on our side is pushing that legislation that I came up with is through something known as a discharge petition. And what that is, it's a petition. Just like people have petitions back in their communities, you get enough signatures on that petition. And what it does in Congress is it overrides the Speaker of the House, Speaker Nancy Pelosi. You get 218 signatures on that. And it says, Speaker Pelosi, doesn't matter that you don't want to bring this to the floor for a vote. It's going to come to the floor for a vote anyways. And that is the way that that particular piece of legislation is being pushed right now. Another big one that came in was Animal Welfare Enforcement Enhancement Act. Also a piece of legislation. I'm not specifically a co-sponsor of that piece of legislation, but there are a lot of other animal welfare support pieces of legislation that I am on. And actually this week we had a dog come into the office, a little beagle. I learned a lot about animal testing this week, actually, from the beagle that came in. This beagle was named Beasley. The people that brought this beagle in, it was named after Pam Beasley from The Office, if you like The Office, by the way. So the organization White Coat Waste that I do a lot of work with, they told me something actually that I'm very proud of. I'm not trying to say anything in a bragging way, but truthfully, I am very proud of what they said. They said, Congressman, because of the legislation that we've worked on together and passed through your office, that we've actually gotten rid of 80% of the animal testing going on within the Department of Veterans Affairs. That's just one agency that we've worked on getting rid of animal testing. There are a number of other agencies like Food and Drug Administration and others that we've worked on as well. But I was actually very proud that they came in there and told me that. Some of the things that I learned about dogs and animal testing, which maybe some of you will find interesting as well. They basically only use beagles as the test animal. That's like the standard test animal. These companies that do that testing are basically vertically integrated, where they raise these beagles just for the purpose of being tested. In many cases, these animals are really not allowed outside. They're not, because they don't want them exposed to other environments because of the testing that they're doing. They live their life almost like a piece of veal, where they're in a cage that has, great holes underneath of it so that their urine and feces just fall through that to make it easier, which is obviously something uncomfortable to sit on for 24 hours a day. And they have little or no interaction with any other animals. And those dogs, those beagles, are specifically bred for that miserable life. And then after that, it's in most cases mandated that they are actually euthanized no matter how old they are. And part of the reason that they say these companies demand that they're euthanized is because they want to do autopsies of their organs and things like that. But in many cases, they're not doing autopsies, and they're still trying to demand that these animals be euthanized. And also in many cases, you can take these animals and not necessarily have the need to do autopsies to garner the information that you need. You can get the information that you need off of all of the wires and other things that they have going on with the animal. Like if any of you have ever been in the hospital, like I've been in the hospital, you're being monitored in a host of different ways. Well, they're monitoring these animals in a host of different ways. So there's also a need on that front in many cases for them not to have to euthanize them for the purpose of garnering that information. So there's a lot of holes in what they do with animal testing. I'm going to continue to work to bring that to an end, as we've had a great deal of success with. Last piece of legislation that I'll bring up before I go to questions that came in the comments. And again, just remind everybody, like and subscribe if you want to know when we're doing these live Q&As. Reach out to the office, come into the office, write a letter to the office, call the office. We'll do everything that we can to help you and answer your questions and let you know what's going on in Washington. And this is just one of the other venues that we're trying to do that for you. So other piece of legislation that I am a co-sponsor of, Stop Iranian Drones Act, that came through my committee, the Committee of Foreign Affairs. Was glad to see it pass the House earlier this week. This bill expands existing provisions that require sanctions against individuals or entities that provide certain types of weapon systems to Iran, the largest state sponsor of terror, that unfortunately right now the administration and Secretary Blinken and others are working to get our country back in bed with. And sometimes people say, in business or in dealings with other people, it's not personal. It's just business. It's not personal. It's not personal with these people. That's not it for me. It is personal for me. I was injured in Afghanistan. I lost 2 legs and a finger in Afghanistan. I lost as we did that disastrous withdrawal that was all about politics out of Afghanistan to get that done on September 11, which is when the administration wanted to do it, to have a September 11 party, a 9/11 party. We saw 13 Americans killed. Hell yes, that's personal to me, to lose Americans over politics in that kind of way, or to see what's going on to Americans because of inflation, because of policies put in place by the administration, the way that affects everybody across our community, regardless of party lines. Absolutely, these things are personal to me. And so, truth be told, I really don't like Secretary Blinken because these things are personal to me. And maybe that comes out sometimes when I have these people before me in hearings, because it's personal. And that's how it is. But the Stop Iranian Drones Act, that did come through our committee, like dealing with the Secretary of State. I don't like that they're trying to get back in bed with Iran, but I was glad to see this piece of legislation move forward and pass. So in that, want to go to questions that you all have, that you guys have come up with. And so I'll get one of my staff here to put up the questions and try to read it out for you. So it says,
Will you do all you can to ensure there is never, it's highlighted or not highlighted, capitalized, never a disinformation governance board or anything akin to one? And the answer is yes, I will. This is something that is another opportunity for the administration right now to try and suppress free speech. And I would just say this again in this way as a service member, as somebody that I was absolutely willing to give my life for this country. I still am willing to give this life for my country. And I have seen many, I'm not even going to say, I've seen many of my friends give their life for this country. In that, I say to people constantly, the direction of the United States of America, it has to be worth the sacrifice of America's defenders. This disinformation governance board by this administration that does everything possible to distribute disinformation through Jennifer Psaki and their secretaries of various offices and everything this is just another chance for them to erode, in my opinion, the First Amendment rights of people here in the United States of America. I would say it like this. I didn't fight. I'm not going to speak for all of my friends, but I know a hell of a lot of my friends did not fight for this country so that Mark Zuckerberg could be the arbiter of what is truth or what is not, or Joe Biden or anybody else in his administration, or so that any CEO of Twitter, prior to Elon Musk now taking over there, or somebody else could go out there and decide what you get to say or don't say. Those aren't the reasons that we went out there and fought for this country. So yes, I will do everything possible to make sure that this latest ploy by the administration, their disinformation governance board, is something that does not come to fruition. So if there's another question, like I tell everybody, like and subscribe, and you'll know when we're doing more of these Q&As, and we'll try to answer your questions. Send your questions in to the office. Call us. Let us know how we can help you. We will do that. It is what we try to do. So you've mentioned in the emails to your constituents that Biden is not doing enough to help Ukraine. What specifically should be done in addition to what the U.S. is already doing to help Ukraine? So I would talk about a number of different things on this front. One would be aircraft. Ukraine is specifically requesting aircraft on top of the surface-to-air man-portable platforms that we are providing them to shoot aircraft such as helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft out of the sky. We're doing anti-armor weapons. One of the things that can help Ukraine is us being very, very clear instead of very, very opaque about what the United States of America considers a red line for what goes on within the borders of Ukraine. That would be something that would be very helpful to Ukraine. That kind of certainty to let them know, hey, it's not going to be tolerated that they're doing this, or this. But the administration is absolutely unwilling to go out there and do that. I think of that, as I mentioned already, the administration should be speaking about, no matter how long it takes to expel Russia from Ukraine. Let's go back there and say that great President Zelensky of the Ukraine quote that if Russians are in the Ukraine, they're going to be there by themselves because every Ukrainian has fought to the death. That's what President Zelensky, once said, and just an absolutely amazing statement of leadership and the commitment of their people. Let's go out there and let those people know that if it takes a year or 10 years or whatever it is, this is the end result for Russia. Putin isn't going to be in place. They're out of Crimea. They're out of Ukraine and all parts of Georgia. They need to have, we should be pushing for demilitarized zones along all Russian borders because of them invading the sovereignty of another European nation there. There should be Russian nuclear demilitarization. This is something, in my opinion, we should be pushing for because of their elevation of what they are doing with their nuclear posture. It should be known that there will be war tribunals for their war crimes. And the list goes on and on. But those things, as you saw, or as you'll see in videos that we put up today of me asking Secretary Blinken about this, are things that our administration that's in place right now are unwilling to commit to. The tough questions and the tough stances. And I think that's, in my opinion, honestly, the biggest difference that you see in foreign policy between the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And love him or hate him, President Trump went out there and said what was on his mind, what should happen, what he thought, took players off the battlefield, like Soleimani from Iran, you name it, made his yes, yes, and his no, no. And that was the strongest possible thing that you can do as it relates to foreign policy, in my opinion. Every foreign intelligence agency had no idea what exactly President Trump was going to say or do, which was great. They couldn't read him like they can read President Biden like a book. But they did know this. Once he said that he was going to do something, they knew that he wasn't bluffing. And again, that is one of those big differences between these two administrations. So let me see if we got any more questions to go to. If we do, I'll be happy to answer them. So it says, great job. We really appreciate your tireless effort. Thank you. It's an honor to do it. I'd say this, say uphill battle on the endless spending. Yes. So let's talk about this. And let me just say something else before this. So I always remind people, this is not my congressional seat. This is your congressional seat. I have the honor of sitting in this seat for a period of time, but it is a seat like all of them that belong to the people. So the uphill battle on this endless amount of spending, and you talk about inflation, also peripheral to this, it's something that the appetite for spending of this administration and really government as a whole is absolutely limitless. The government, without any regret, would happily spend every single dollar in your pocket. Republican, Democrat, independent, senior, young person, does not matter. The government would spend every dollar in your pocket. That's what they would do. And they wouldn't apologize for it either. And they would do it in wasteful ways. They would send it abroad on autopilot programs to despot countries that we don't even know if they support freedom in any kind of way or American values. These are things that I see try to come through the House of Representatives on a daily basis. And in my lanes, I do everything that I can to fight these on a daily basis. When you talk about inflation and what's going on, inflation is just like taxation and spending. It's just another way that takes dollars out of your pocket. As I was around home this past weekend, I ran into, somebody at the Publix meat counter that was talking to me about they live here, but they work at a Publix in Fort Pierce. There's probably, 20 Publix in between where they live and where they work. And it's costing them an extra $100 a week now to make that trip from where they live to where they work because of where gas prices are compared to when they started making that trip. Spoken to people that have air conditioning repair companies and plumbing companies and pest control companies that have fleets of vehicles from 3 or 4 vehicles to 30 or 40 vehicles that are out there on the road that are getting hammered because of the increase in fuel prices. And those increase in fuel prices are the starting point, the absolute ground zero, patient one for why inflation is occurring in our country. And the reason for those energy prices being higher is directly a result of the Biden administration, their elimination of the XL pipeline. They're getting rid of somewhere around 20,000 oil and gas leases. Their policies that say there's going to be no use of these fossil fuels 10 years from now in the United States of America, which means nobody is lending to put new projects for those things out there, even if there are oil and gas leases for them. All of these policies, you combine all of these things, and it equals a situation where the energy prices for all Americans and everybody around the globe are going through the roof, and that is a direct result of policy. In the United States of America, we should be able to meet, at minimum, all of our needs for food and energy from sea to shining sea, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, that should be the most, at minimum, what the United States of America can meet in terms of its needs. There are a number of other things that we are in danger of not being able to meet, as people are realizing: semiconductors, medical parts, various, things that are treatments for people. These are things that people are realizing right now. We need to get those things back in the United States of America. But again, at minimum, food and energy inside the United States of America. That's what's right for Americans, and that's what needs to happen. So I'm going to do one more because we're hitting that 30-minute mark here. Let's bring up one more question. Do you see the wall being built if Republicans take over the House? I'm sorry to say, no, I don't. I would absolutely hope that the wall would be built. I will fight and do everything that I can, as I've been doing, to see that wall be completed. But I would be lying to you if I said that the Biden administration is about to go out there, even if we pass something through the House and through the Senate. I would say, it's hard to say 100% on anything. I would say 100% he would veto that law requiring them to finish the southern border wall. That would be, if I was in Vegas making a bet right now, I would put a bet on Biden vetoing that. You go in this and you look at what they're doing with Title 42 right now and the southern border. It's a good opportunity to speak about this for a moment. So Title 42, put in place specifically to protect the health of Americans from all these people crossing our southern border illegally, right? So the Biden administration looking at getting rid of that, which is what allows basically Remain in Mexico to be in place. If they get rid of that Title 42, which they want to do, they're fighting to see this done. They know that there are hundreds of thousands of people on our southern border right now waiting to cross the border and come into America, find the first person that they can find in a government uniform and say, asylum, asylum, I want asylum right here, give me asylum. They're not running from government workers. They're running to Border Patrol and ICE and anybody else that they can find to say, give me asylum. And here's how this results also in human trafficking. There are statistics out there specifically pointing out just how few of the kids that are coming across the border with these adults are actually the real children of these adults. They're being used as mules so they can go across the border and say, this is my family member. We're a family. So, release me out into the community and I'll return back for my court date. Actually, never. They'll never return back for their court date. And then this is another problem that we deal with later. That's another part of why there should be a southern border wall, which, again, to answer that question, do everything I can to fight for it. The Biden administration would 100% veto it, in my opinion. Couple other things on the southern border right now. I had a Latin American country delegation in my office earlier this week, again, as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And it was one of those countries that a huge number of these migrants are coming from. And they spoke very specifically to me. I'm not saying exactly who it is, because I don't want them to be able to have less of an ability to try and influence the administration about bringing these things to an end, which is what they were talking about to me. So that's why I'm being coy about saying which country it was that was in my office. But they were talking to me very specifically about the Biden administration policies absolutely leading to the flood of people that are leaving their country. Yes, there are problems in their country that need to be dealt with, but the mules, those that are getting people out of that country for the tune of $5,000 to $10,000 a person or a family, billion-dollar business moving these people from countries to the United States of America, are literally out there advertising Biden administration policies in their country, saying, look, this is what the administration is saying. They're getting rid of this. Get ready, pack your bags, get your dollars ready, pay us, and we can get you into the United States of America in this way. This is the people from this country saying, because of what your president is doing, this is what is happening. We know that we have problems in our country, but we don't want to see people leave our country. We don't want to see youth leave our country. We want to see people stay in our country and make it better and fix problems. But because of what this administration is doing on the border, and they list other things as well, right back to day one policies of Biden, this is absolutely making this happen. And, that's from the mouth of those in other countries. We see what's going on here in our own country. So in that, I would say this again, just one more time. And I try to always end any conversation I have with this as a comment. If you have some kind of issue that you need help with any government agency, you're a senior and you need help with Social Security, or you're a veteran and you need help with the VA, or you're a family member and you need to know something about your family member in the military, or you're a business owner and you need help with the SBA, or whatever it is, call our office, write an email to our office, write a letter to our office, whatever it is. We will treat it like it is an emergency, that the emergency that it is in your life, we will treat that like an emergency in our life. Give you the number. I got it written up on my board here. So a DC number 202-225-3026. If you want to call Port St. Lucie office, I'll give you Port St. Lucie number 772-336-2877. Jupiter 561-530-7778. And those are a couple of the numbers. Stop in the office, call the office, whatever we can do. I do not care about your politics. I represent your seat. I will do everything that I can to help you in any way that we can go out there and help you. And we try to do that literally to the absolute best of any ability possible. So in that, again, honor to represent you. And I will look forward to seeing you all around town this weekend. And in that, you all take care.